Hello and welcome. I'm Debbie Fussell with Broadway Association Management, and welcome to Condo Living. With me today is Rick Cody from Dawson, Florida, and attorney Richard DeBost. We're here today to talk to you, the homeowner, the board of director, about this financial crush that unfortunately is upon Southwest Florida. Rick, perhaps you could tell us anything happening on the insurance front. Is there going to be increases? Are associations right now budgeting correctly for possibly what's going to come down?
That's a good question, and it's very timely. Right now, the budgets for insurance are probably okay, but there's going to be some big changes probably taking place in 2010. You're going to see that associations' premiums are probably going to start going back up again. I think you're going to start seeing in early 2010 that increases in insurance rates for associations are probably going to start rising, maybe 10%. And you'll see a level, it's going to step up over that over the next few years. The rates are actuarially unsound at this point in time.
But that is something, and then in the next year and a half to 2 years, associations, board members really need to be starting to look at that, that their budgets are in line with covering a potential increase.
Exactly. If they want to try to avoid having any special assessments or what have you, which we know is always a difficult issue, they would be smart to start building a little bit extra premium in, like I said, probably 10% starting 2010.
What that may offset is right now you're seeing that budgets have to contain a line item for bad debt. That's a line item you never saw in a budget 3 years ago, but now you do for all the people that are not paying their assessments. We foresee that financial problem is probably going to hopefully come down. So maybe as that comes down and your bad debt line item reduces, it might offset the insurance. I mean, knock on wood, that would be perfect.
Another point that has come up, we've seen it quite a lot, are the board members, the owners out there that prefer to be self-managed, and they totally believe they're saving that management fee, that cost per door, when actually it's probably costing them maybe a little more money in the long run. Don't you agree with that?
Well, I can give you my perspective on that. I know some associations that are self-managed very, very well. But to do it right, it takes a tremendous amount of time, personal time, volunteer time, and you really have to give it a full-time job perspective. And unfortunately, most self-managed associations don't do that. It's a part-time thing. So what I find on the legal side of it is they call the attorney too often. And I'm happy to take phone calls and bill my time, but I find that well-managed associations by management companies, the manager can act somewhat as a gatekeeper to the lawyer, so that the manager's experience and background, such as your office has, can say, well, that's a legal question, and we'll run it to the attorney. Whereas a lot of times they can say, well, no, they can give the answer. It's not a legal answer, but it's an answer that a lawyer doesn't really need to answer. And so self-managed associations on the legal side of it, I find, use the attorney oftentimes too often and thereby pay more money than they would if they were actually managed. It's a team thing, really, and that's what I tell my clients. If you all work together and know your roles, you will save money. But if you try to just use one and not the others, you will waste money.
But one of the things, too, is you know the vendors. You know who does what well and who is professional in what they do and who is fair in the pricing of their product. A great example in insurance, I recently insured an association that previously had been self-insured and self-managed. After many years of being self-managed, decided they needed a professional property manager. And they were paying about $18,000 a year in their insurance. The thing is, they had gone to an insurance agency that didn't specialize in the provision of condominium insurance for them. And so what happened is they didn't have coverages that are statutorily mandated. They didn't have credits that are available, wind mitigation credits. We were able to give them more insurance, give them all the coverages that they required, and we saved them $5,000 on their annual premium cost. A property manager like yourselves would know to come to an agency that specializes in condominium insurance.
There are many, many associations. There are hundreds of thousands of them in the state of Florida. but the pool of vendors that exclusively serve those associations is relatively small. Not every insurance company handles condominiums. Not every law firm handles condominiums. They could, but you're going to be better served by any vendor, whether it's a management company, an insurance, a lawyer, a painter, that exclusively serves that industry because they stay up on the laws.
Correct. Yeah.
They stay in the loop, and they know who's good and who's bad. And I find that all the time.
Absolutely.
I mentioned wind mitigation credit and talking about budget issues and what have you. Most everybody now has figured out that there are credits on their policy that they can get for their association from getting a wind mitigation affidavit is basically proof that they've done the hardening or their buildings have the hardening aspect that would show that they're less likely to have damage from wind.
Correct. That's the inspection. They're going into attics, correct?
Exactly. What you need to do and what a good insurance agency does, what a good property manager does, is to make sure that those forms are completed correctly. Sometimes they don't give all the aspects that actually can save them money. For instance, if they have a new roof, chances are that technically they should be what they call Florida Building Code equivalent. I've seen wind mitigation affidavits on buildings that had brand new roofs which said that they weren't FBC equivalent, Florida Building Code equivalent. And so there's a little things like that you can look at to make sure that they're getting all the credit that they can.
And you saw that happen, didn't you, in 2004, right after Charlie?
Absolutely.
And the roofing companies came out of the woodwork, so to speak, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's a very, very important key and to save money. I know we have done that on a few of our associations, and it's worked out very, very well. Richard, was there any one common question that you seem to receive?
Right now in this market, the number one question is how do we collect our money? When will we collect our money?
Yes.
For all the people that are not paying assessments. Southwest Florida competes with Nevada on a month-to-month basis as to who's number one for foreclosures. And we've been number one, unfortunately, in that market more times than we would have liked. And we still find that the foreclosures are very high, although we're finding they've leveled off. And so we suspect that in the latter part of 2009, it's going to start to get back to a more normal basis. But the number one problem with bank foreclosures is once a person has gone into bank foreclosure and they've decided to not pay their bank, whatever bank it might be, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that bank loaned them to buy their condominium or unit or their home, if they've checked out on the bank, they are not going to pay your association the $1,200, $1,300, $2,000. So what's frustrating to associations is they look to the attorney and the management company, why can't you collect this money from the homeowner? He owes us $2,000. And the simple answer is, if he's decided not to pay the bank the $200,000, they're not going to pay you the $2,000. So there's no amount of legal money, legal fees that you can pay me to make someone pay when they've decided not to. Alternatively, there are still a lot of people that do intend to pay. And if you follow the normal course and you continue with your normal collection practices that have always worked well in the past, and the property is in the right position based on the numbers, it's still very worthwhile to pursue your collection through an attorney and through a management company to collect that money. But what you basically have to do is you have to take your delinquencies and put them into two categories. One that's a normal category. It's not in bank foreclosure. It's not in bankruptcy. You should pursue that collection. But there's a large number that are in bank foreclosure or bankruptcy. And those, you're just along for the ride. You're waiting for the bank to complete its process, and once it does, you will be paid a certain amount of money. The problem today is the bank's process that should take 4 to 6 months is taking 6 to 12 to 18 months. And there's nothing that we can do to make the bank go faster. And while it goes slowly, your debt builds. And that's the dilemma that associations are facing right now. It's just a huge increase in the number of bank foreclosures, which we read about every day in the paper.
Yeah, these associations that are so cash-strapped, they need some encouragement and they need some help and people willing, and I think we all three are. I would just say again, it's very, very important to analyze their budgets and see what can be done, what can help you when you don't have that much income coming in. You certainly don't want to spend any more money than you don't have.
And wind mitigation I'm surprised how many people don't know. When I mention it to my clients, they don't know what wind mitigation is. And a perfect example is a self-managed association that's not using an insurance agent that deals in that area. So they might have wasted 3 or 4 years of not being able to take advantage of the wind mitigation.
And for a nominal,
how much
really
can that
a
save
nominal
an association?
Oh, up to probably 45%.
45%. So if they've waited 3 years to do it, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money for an initial investment to have that performed.
And as you know, the insurance item on any budget is probably the biggest item by far. Especially the older the building and the construction, the lower the level of construction, the more they're going to pay for insurance.
Something that's very, very important and a very big priority to me and to the Broadway Association management is customer service. I, for one, whether it's business related or personal, I do not, absolutely not, like calling a number and having to press 4 or 5 numbers before I can actually talk to a person. Do you guys feel the same way? It's annoying.
I know what you mean. When you push the numbers, what I call that running the gauntlet. You're trying to get to the person that you pay your money to, but you have to go through, in the legal business, the receptionist, the legal assistant, the paralegal, and then we'll get back to you. And I can't sit here and say that I'm perfect. I mean, we're not perfect, but we recognize that running the gauntlet frustrates customers, and so we try to, as much as is reasonably possible, to be directly available to the client because they're paying my bill. They're not paying my bill to talk to my legal assistant. They're paying the bill to get a legal question answered. So as much as we can, we try to be accessible.
And in any business, insurance, law, property management, whatever, if you have a question or concern, you really want it answered. You certainly don't want to wait for someone to come back. And the one thing I'm sure all 3 of our firms do this, everyone has a cell phone. Our CAM manager carries a cell phone everywhere, and I know for a fact he was at a board meeting the other day. The board members had a question, a legal question. They could not get their attorney on the phone. They could not get that question answered. And I know our manager picked up his cell phone, called your cell phone, instant answer.
Well, I know he does that with Rick as well, and I'm happy to help. I know Rick is.
And I know who that manager is because he calls me all the time in the middle of the board meeting and says, Rick, I need some help. And I always pick up my cell phone. There are a lot of insurance agencies in Southwest Florida. There's a lot of attorneys and there's a lot of property managers. But what makes the difference between, I think, this group here and a lot of them is a return phone call. I mean,
just a more
what a basic thing is returning phone calls and talking to them and giving them answers to their questions.
Exactly. I thank you guys so much, and really thank you for joining us. I believe you're going to be seeing websites, email addresses, our telephone numbers should be at the bottom of the screen. We all would certainly welcome any comment from you, any questions, any concerns, and we really will try our best to answer. From a free budget review, any questions about mitigation, law questions, please feel free. We'll do this again in the future. Another thing, please watch for. We're planning a seminar free of charge. We will answer property management questions. We'll have an insurance expert and hopefully an association legal expert all available for you. So watch for that seminar coming soon. Well, we wish you well and thank you very much for joining us today. Goodbye.